Welcome, children, to your nightmares. This is Mr. Midnight. I welcome you all to my humble abode. I am going to be feasting on your fears, pains, and sorrows. So come into my little lair, and let me tell you a tale or two about some Christmas terrors. This is the time of year for joy and happiness, but let me change that for you, because fear overcomes all joy. These tales involve the scariest monsters known to us, humans themselves. So let's begin, and always remember, the darkness always follows us. And now, I will leave you with my narrator, so enjoy.
Number 1. Just a nice Christmas Eve drive. This happened over 20 years ago. I was driving back home with my girlfriend at the time. It was Christmas Eve, and my mother's family used to hold a large celebration at my aunt's house in Estocada. This was my girlfriend's first time meeting with my extended family, but she got on quite well with them. We spent the majority of the afternoon and evening talking, playing poker, and opening presents. My girlfriend had been quite inebriated by the time we had to leave. Therefore, I'd be driving us home. It was around 11 PM or so. I was driving my girlfriend's car along Highway 211. Now, this stretch of road is surrounded by farms and dense patches of forest, and parts of it are unlit. But nothing to fear. I grew up in this area, so I knew this road like the back of my hand. The both of us were just driving and talking away, just two young lovers making the most of our moment together. There is a portion on the highway that descends down an enormous hill before crossing Deep Creek. Surrounding both sides of the road are thick forests. There are no lights. The only thing we could see was the area directly in front of our headlights. I drive down the hill, cross the bridge, and uphill through more forest. It's as the highway starts to flatten out that it happens. Something sprints across the road so suddenly that I almost hit whatever it was. I slam on the brakes. I turn to my girlfriend and ask her if she saw it. She confirmed that she had, but she couldn't make out what it was. Maybe it was a coyote, as they are a fairly common sight in this area. But something felt off about it. Whatever it was that ran in front of our car disappeared into the woods next to the road. Coyotes don't usually just dart out in front of cars. Not like that anyway. So for some reason, I decided to check it out. I turned the car around and switched on the high beams to better light up the forest in which this thing had vanished in. I step out the car and walk towards the woods. I don't see anything. But now it feels like perhaps I had made a grave error. My heart is pounding and the hairs on the back of my neck are standing at full attention. But I still don't see anything unusual in the trees. Suddenly the car's horn blasts. It's not a beep 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 that you'd get if, say, your driver or passenger wanted you to hurry up and get in the car. No, this was a long blaring beep. I walked back into the car and asked my girlfriend why she leaned on the horn like that. She said nothing. Instead, she pointed to a spot about 50 feet from where I was standing. I looked over in that direction, and that's when I saw it. Surely this was the thing that ran in front of our car. It was a man. He was completely naked. His skin was covered in dirt and mud, and in one of his hands he was holding a hatchet. He looked back at us, and then he smiled and waved to us just before turning around and walking back into the forest. Needless to say, we got the hell out of there. Once we were safely driving away, my girlfriend explained what had just happened. While I was trying to look for the man in the area he initially vanished in, he circled back around and came out from another spot in the forest beyond my car headlights. My girlfriend had seen something out of the corner of her eye, and that's when she saw him. Before she honked the horn, he was walking towards me, his hatchet raised as if making to strike me. We called the authorities once we got safely back home, but they never found anybody. Oh, they did, and just didn't tell us. But the officer we spoke to explained his theory. The man was obviously looking to ambush unsuspecting lone travelers, for Lord only knows what reason. We all agreed that my girlfriend's quick thinking saved my life, as it let my potential killer know that I wasn't alone out there. I moved back into the area recently, so I now drive that highway often. No naked hatchet man sightings yet, but I can tell you that I am definitely extra vigilant now, especially near Deep Creek. Number 2. Christmas Eve Lyft ride nightmare. I'm a 22-year-old male, and I live in a large city in the Midwest. Now, I drive for Lyft while putting myself through trade school. I drive for other similar companies, but that's beside the point. I have many horror stories from those as well, but I'll tell those another time. It was Christmas Eve, 2020. I was out running Lyft for a few hours before heading to my mum's with my new baby and wife. Nothing special going on for the night, just the usual. I get a ride request. It was a pickup from this kinda lower income apartment complex. No big deal. I arrive and I find my passenger. He has all his belongings, several boxes of stuff. Now, my car is a 2006 Chevy Impala, so it's not too big. We get all his stuff loaded up, barely, and are on our way. During the ride he's crying, saying his girlfriend was cheating on him and he had walked in on them earlier that night. He couldn't stay there because it was her name on the lease, so I was taking him to a hotel. Now, in my city we have a street that is well known for having vices. Hookers, drugs, gangs, weapons and shady motels. The works. We get to the motel. He asks me to wait for him to check in and get his key. No problem, man, I say. I'll confess. I break the rules a little when it comes to Lyft. I have a gun hidden in a concealed holster, secured to the underside of my driver's seat for protection. Reason being, driving Lyft and other contract apps, I have had knives and guns pulled on me, as well as people have tried to fight me, rob me and all kinds of other things. But, like I said, another time. The motel was on that street I mentioned before. Homeless people were everywhere. There was a dude on the far corner of the complex that still had a needle in his arm, passed out against the building. And I'm a big fan of true crime and horror narration, so I'm on edge. He gets his key. The whole motel is ground level, so to help the guy out, I drive to his door. As I mentioned before, he had a lot of stuff, so I started to help him unload his stuff. Which on my second trip getting stuff, I saw a guy come out of a room just to the south of my car, followed by two ladies. They came up. That's when I saw the guy raise a freaking shotgun up out of his long coat and storm into the room. The two ladies followed him, slamming the door behind them. Following, I heard a lot of yelling and shouting. I was just waiting for shots to ring out. Out of nowhere, my passenger came up behind me. I can take this, man. Go ahead and take off. Have a Merry Christmas. And he gave me a cash tip. I didn't even notice he took the boxes out of my hands and slid a $5 bill in my pocket. I was frozen. I knew what may have been going down in that room. I had to leave, or at least get to where I could get my gun. I know the guy and both ladies saw me, and I know they knew I saw the gun. I had to get out of there. You know, no witnesses. I got in my car and sped away quickly. I got a block or so away and called the cops. I give them every detail. After I got off the phone with the police, I signed out a Lyft. I haven't made much money, but it was done. I got a call later that night. The cops investigated. They never found the gunman or the woman. They never answered the door I saw them come out of. And the occupants of the room they went into said nothing had happened and that I was full of crap. Well, I know what I saw. So to the gunman I saw with the shotgun, who I'm sure was making a statement to someone about a debt, let's not meet again. Number 3. I was almost kidnapped at a Christmas market. So when I was 7, 8ish, my parents took me to a Christmas market that had tons of activities for kids. I didn't know this at the time, but my parents were fighting and thus preoccupied and just mostly left me on my own. The way it worked was you bought some vouchers at the door and could then go inside and use one voucher for one activity. There was stuff like baking cookies, painting stuff, wood burning for older kids, etc. It was pretty fantastic. Some of the stuff had queues if there was a lot of interest. Now, I'd gotten about 10 vouchers. An activity is about 15 minutes, and my parents were in a cafe in the building but well out of sight. Since it was an area you could only get into if you accompanied a kid or were a kid, I guess they felt safe leaving me alone. This was allowed but not encouraged. Anyway, I was queuing for my favorite activity there, the fabric painting section, where you got a piece of linen and could draw Christmas patterns and stuff on it. It was already my 3rd time, but whatever, right? I had to queue, and when I was about halfway to the entrance, someone grabbed my arm. I panicked immediately because my parents would never have touched me like that, and I knew nobody else there. I yelped and tried to pull away but couldn't. Turning, I saw it was an older lady, maybe 40s to 50s, not sure. See, she was well dressed. Looked pretty strict but normal. Anyway, she was pulling me out of the queue against my will. I tried to yell and ask her to let me go, but she said something like, "You always do this, come on Marie." My name is not Marie, not even close. I yelled as much, still thinking that she just confused me for someone else. I was a pretty average looking girl with a brunette ponytail. Nothing particularly special. No were my clothes. She looked down at me again, scoffed, and told me to stop throwing a tantrum and that we were going home. It was at that exact moment I realized if I didn't escape, she would take me away. So I just basically opened my mouth and screamed at the top of my lungs. Not words, just a screech. Before that, I'd mostly asked to be released. Loud but not full on screaming. I was a polite kid. She paused mid-step because clearly I startled her, but she didn't let go yet. So I just screamed about the only thing I could really make sense of. My name is Sam. This was the first time that people actually looked at us as more than a mom, grandma and a kid in a tantrum, because I'm clearly too old to not know my name, and also visibly scared. I was still trying to pull away, but she had a grip on my forearm like a vice. I made eye contact with the first random person I saw looking over, a guy, early 30s I guess, definitely younger than her. I just pled for him to help me, and he actually came over at that point. We were in sight of the exit. She dragged me quite far, and I guess at that point she decided it was too much of a hassle and let me go. Since I'd been fighting her, I immediately slammed into the ground, which actually promoted more people to step up to me to help. I was sobbing, and as soon as I could get to my feet, ran the other way to my parents. I must have barreled into 10 plus people and kids on the way to where I knew my parents were. It was a cafe like I said, and they were in the middle. My mum had super recognizable fake red hair, so even sobbing I could see her easily. I banged into a table, knocked stuff off and just threw myself at my mother. I was in no state to explain, and she was both mad at me for making a scene and really effing worried because I was not the type to cause a disturbance, pretty much ever. I wanted to explain but couldn't. There was a bit of a commotion around, with people being nosy. But as I calmed down, I realized that the guy had begged for help but explained to my parents what had happened. I hadn't even noticed him come with me, but I kind of tuned in when he kept asking if my grandma was here or something, and if I could have known her. Obviously my mother confirmed that was not the case and asked if what he told her was right. He confirmed that some woman was dragging me off calling me Marie. My parents, the guy, his son who was a fair few years older than me, maybe 15 or so, went with me to security where I tried and failed to describe the lady. The guy had a much better description of her, but she was obviously long gone. I think they called police, but I never spoke to any cops that I can remember. I felt really awkward and sorry that I ruined the other kid's day. So I gave him the rest of my vouchers so he could do more stuff if he wanted. He was really nice and gave me a pack of the cookies he begged to eat while the adults were talking. I don't remember any of their names or anything, but I remember how grateful I was to the kid. More so than his dad even. It just really comforted me that I had another kid around who was nice. Anyway, my parents took me home ASAP, of course, and we never went to that place again. There was a short story in the newspaper the next day about a kidnapping scare my mother told me some years later, but it was all just speculation, and they didn't even confirm in the paper if it was an attempt or just a misunderstanding. Well, it's sure as crap wasn't a misunderstanding. They never caught the lady or did any follow-ups, as far as I am aware. I actually had bruises on my arm where she gripped me through my sweater, and I still don't like Christmas markets much.
Thank you for listening, my children. I can see you fill with fear, and it is exhilarating and tasty. I'll see you again very soon. So until then, love the darkness, as it always follows.